Good afternoon, colleagues. Good evening, Dumelang, Sanbonani, all of you colleagues and other guests joining us tonight. I'm very pleased to welcome you all to this Vice-Chancellor's inaugural lecture. This is the second in our 2022 series and the fifth time we are delivering this important event virtually. For those who don't know me, my name is Mamokgethi Phakeng. I'm a full professor of mathematics education at UCT and also the 10th Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cape Town. The fact that I'm addressing you, all of you tonight, from across the world is evidence of how inaugural lectures have been truly transformed by the onset of COVID-19. I'm currently visiting the University of Bristol in the UK, but I did not want to miss the opportunity to be with you virtually. I will begin by introducing the platform party for this evening's event, Associate Professor Kathy Mitchell. She will introduce our guest speaker, Professor Abimbola Windapo. Dr. Kehide Alade is a PhD research student who works with Professor Windapo in the Department of Construction Economics and Management, and he will deliver the vote of thanks. Inaugural lectures are a central part of UCT's academic life and a rite of passage for our academics. They commemorate their appointment to full professorship and all the hard work that brought them to this point, and provides the opportunity to share their research beyond UCT in a way that is accessible to the public. I'm extremely proud to welcome Professor Abimbola Windapo as today's speaker. She will be officially introduced by Associate Professor Michelle, but I want to take this opportunity to personally applaud Professor Abimbola Windapo's achievement of becoming South Africa's and her native Nigeria's first female professor of construction management. I also give a special heartfelt welcome to Professor Windapo's loved ones, as we are all aware of the importance of their support in the achievement of professor status, which is a rigorous process at UCT and not for the faint-hearted. So congratulations to the family and congratulations to Professor Windapo. South Africa's Construction Industry Development Board said in 2020 that nearly half of all the country's construction companies are now women-owned in a sector that has long been male-dominated. For Professor Windapo, transforming her field inside and outside UCT has been a constant since she graduated in 1987 as the first woman to study building at her university in Nigeria. She has made numerous important contributions to her field, including research into the discipline of construction management, the topic of her lecture tonight. Professor Windapo epitomizes the credentials for which UCT is proudly acknowledged: quality of learning and contribution to citizenship. Prior to her leading research, for example, there was no recipe for sustainable contractor development. Practices used by construction companies to ensure health and safety standards were not established in the literature. The right to adequate housing is enshrined in Section 26 of South Africa's Constitution. But in a reality where apartheid's housing segregation laws resulted in a crisis characterized by severe and inadequate infrastructure and mushrooming informal settlements, spatial injustice continues to be denied to the vast majority of South Africans. Let me say that again. Spatial justice continues to be denied to the vast majority of South Africans. Professor Windapo's work has a critical role to play in illustrating ways in which to transform the construction industry, while concomitantly reducing the impact of their activities on the environment through sustainable practices. Our students are extremely privileged to have the opportunity to learn from someone who steadfastly believes that the science of materials, infrastructure, and construction businesses has the power not only to change access to basic infrastructure across the continent, but also to open access to related job opportunities. Professor Windapo's work is an outstanding example of the essential combination of excellence, transformation, and sustainability that we strive for at UCT. I very much look forward to the many lessons that she will share in her lecture today and through her work in the future. I'll now hand over to Associate Professor Michelle. Over to you, Kathy.
Thank you, Vice-Chancellor. Abimbola Windapo is a Professor of Construction Management in the Faculty of Engineering and the Built Environment. She has more than 34 years of experience in practice, teaching and research in the construction industry. She currently holds the portfolio of Deputy Dean, responsible for postgraduate studies in the faculty. Professor Windapo is a professional construction project manager and a mentor registered with the South African Council for the Project and Construction Management Professions. She is also registered with the Council of Registered Builders of Nigeria and is a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Building. She is a C2 rated researcher with the National Research Foundation. Her research is interdisciplinary and focuses on construction industry development, construction business and project management, infrastructure delivery management, practices and performance. She is the University of Cape Town's contact for the Arua Centre for Unemployment and Skills Development and the Urbanization and Habitable Cities in Africa. She is also the editor of the Journal of Construction, Business and Management. She is a distinguished associate of the Royal Academy of Engineering and the recipient of several awards, including the prestigious NSTF South 32 Engineering Research Capacity Development Science Oscars Award and the Best Woman in African Construction Award. The award citation said that she is recognized as an exceptional woman of African descent with outstanding performance, amazing feats, and an immense contribution to the growth of the African construction industry. It gives me great pleasure, Vice-Chancellor, and it is indeed an honor to introduce my colleague from the Department of Construction Economics and Management, Professor Abimbola Windapo, who will be sharing with us her knowledge and expertise on building resilient foundations to prevent project failure. Is there a formula for success? Hopefully, my colleague Bim, you have an answer for us, and I look forward to listening to you. The floor is yours, Prof.
Thank you so much, Kathy, for the warm introduction. And thank you very much, Vice-Chancellor, for your compliments. So welcome, everybody. The Vice-Chancellor, Professor Mamoketi Pakeng, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols duly observed. It gives me great pleasure, and it's a privilege and an honor to present my inaugural lecture titled Building Resilient Foundations to Prevent Project Failure. Is there a formula for success? So my presentation was going to start with an introduction. I'll go through the theory of construction management. I'll provide an overview of resilience and failure in construction. I'll look at the indicators of inherent difficulties in construction. How do we achieve the project objectives will be one of the topics I'll be looking at. I'll also look at the construction management propositions preferred to reduce inherent difficulties on projects and making the project succeed. And finally, I'll come to a conclusion. So as introduction, the talk will be approached through the lens of the production process. So my research philosophy is more inclined to the process-based management theories and the range of methods and techniques available to improve efficiency. And when we talk about efficiency, we mean the timeliness of the project, meeting costs, quality, zero harm, zero waste, and zero accidents on the project. So essentially, my talk will focus on the activities, the actions, and the decisions taken by the project organization between procurement and the finalization and handover phase of the project when using the traditional approach to procurement. So the traditional approach to procurement is where there's a separation between design and the construction process. So the economic effects of efficiency comes from the underlying production process or processes that firms will choose between when making production decisions, because firms are in business to make profits. So they make decisions that are aligned to efficiency. So the theory of production focuses on the inputs of the resources, which and the supply, output supply functions on the other side, under a technical constraints. So there are pressures and constraints, and the technical constraints, which involves the technology, the design, and the materials proposed for the project. So those technical constraints have to be considered as well. That describes a range of production processes that are available to the firm. So there are different ranges, that we have different options, and because of this, the firms and organizations need to make decisions on the best approach. So I'm guided by the view that there is a best way. There's always a better way to do construction in order to achieve superior performance. So the process employs inputs, as we have said. So those inputs include men, not men in general, it also includes women now, material, money, and machines. So what we call the 4 M's. So if we add management, it becomes a 5M. So management is more, it's not a resource that can be measured. So when we look at the inputs, we only look at those 4 M's. Materials, men, money, and the machinery. So these are now transformed. So if you look at a building or an infrastructure after completion, you wouldn't see these inputs. You won't see the hands of the men on the building. You won't see the materials. You won't see the money that was spent. You won't see the machines which would have been taken out of the project site when the building is being commissioned. All you'll see is a nice building at the end of the project. So it goes through this transformation, the transformation that changes these inputs into outputs. So my question would be, so what would you think or consider to be the most difficult input to manage by the project construction organization, and why? So just keep your answers, and then because we'll get answers to that later on. So, but just note that we have those 4 inputs that needs to be managed within that technical constraints of different materials, different technologies available, within the constraints, within the pressures also pushed by the external environment, and then the organization needs to put in place certain actions, take certain decisions in order to counter the pressures and constraints. So the theory of construction management begins with the view that construction management aims to enable construction to be undertaken efficiently, effectively, and productively. The outcomes of this process motivates those involved in construction to take those appropriate actions and make appropriate decisions. So the outcomes of the process is the objectives which we want to achieve, and which includes what I mentioned before, which motivates those involved in construction to scope. The project has to be produced to a scope. It has to be timely at the right agreed time. There must be cost efficiency, zero harm, and accidents. So these outcomes that are desired on projects will motivate the organization, the project organization, to take those appropriate actions and make appropriate and to take appropriate decisions in order to ensure that our processes are efficient, because if it's not efficient, we will not get the outcome desired. So all project stakeholders have conflicting objectives, and therefore the projects may not achieve the client's objectives. So although we go into the project, we have different stakeholders, as I've shown in the previous slides. So they come in with different objectives. We have the architects, engineers, estimators, and then the contractor, all coming in with different objectives. And therefore, the project will not achieve sometimes what the client wants. It won't make those objectives, which are the aim of the construction process, to achieve objectives. So what you find on the slide here is an example of conflicting objectives that range right from what the architect conceived to what the client really wanted. So you could see there are different things and how people look at things. So resilience in construction. We see that there's renewed interest to build resilience in construction projects, given the complexities and dimensions of risks that is usually encountered. Resilience is now becoming like a buzzword. It's a dynamic and nebulous word. It simply refers to the ability to withstand and recover quickly from vulnerabilities and possible hazard. In the context of construction projects and in this presentation, building resilient foundations means the preparedness to reduce the risks, uncertainties, and vulnerabilities arising from construction project difficulties and challenges, which constrains the construction process. So before, we have noted that the construction process has technical constraints. It is affected by the environment. It's a project in the future. It has a long-term nature, and we can hardly predict what's going to happen tomorrow. Not to talk of what's going to happen in 2 years' time or in 5 years' time. Just as we had COVID-19, no one predicted it. So that is the basis of having to build resilience in order to counteract, so that the projects can adapt quickly. The process adapts quickly to respond to these vulnerabilities and ensuring that it meets its agreed objective at the end of the process. So failure in construction. My previous research has shown that projects are vulnerable to failures, abandonment, collapse, accidents, and fatalities, cost increases, delay, and time overruns. So understanding the causes of project difficulties will help us evolve solutions towards making construction processes resilient and able to achieve its objectives. So understanding those causes, like what we see here, shows that the objectives of the project in terms of the scope was not met. And because there was a lack of coordination between all the project stakeholders, including the structural engineer, architects, mechanical engineer, shown on these slides, who says, just let's blame the contractor. Because for those who can read drawings, you'll see that there's a beam here, and then there's a supply air duct, which was not properly coordinated, and now that has posed a problem. And with this kind of problem, it leads to conflicts, it leads to disputes, and then finally project abandonment, which is not the aim of our efficient construction processes, which we aim for in construction management. So what are the indicators of inherent difficulties on projects that can lead to project failure? So let's understand what those inherent difficulties are. So our research findings resonate with earlier postulations of Radosavljevic and Bennett that inherent difficulty on projects can be attributed to the internal project and external project environment. So the internal project environment is where the transformation takes place, while the external one is where we have those influence of the external interference on our projects. So the external interference contributes to the inherent difficulty, whilst three concepts, the quality of relationships, the number of interacting teams, and performance variability, all contribute to complexity. So let's go back to the question we asked about what is the most difficult input to manage. So the most difficult inputs, the most difficult resource to manage for a construction manager is people, the men on the project. Why? Because they are complex, they are highly aware, and then they introduce complexity to the project. Materials, machines, money, they are inert. If they are not stolen, if they are not taken away, 20 years, 50 years, wherever you put it, you'll find it there. But men is something else entirely. So we need to look at our quality, the quality of relationships on projects. We need to look at the number of interacting teams and performance variability. Those are the concepts that lead to complexity, and complexity with the external interference on the project leads to inherent difficulty, for which we need to create construction management strategies to counteract the inherent difficulty, because we don't want to manage difficulty. Nobody wants to manage a headache. So you want to clear the headache and then have a simple project to manage. So what's the cause? So we just step back a bit to say, what's the cause of these problems, the quality of relationships? What's the what contributes to this quality of relationships and number of interacting teams? So it starts from the design. The design of a facility determines the number of distinct technologies involved in its construction and how closely these technologies are related. So when we talk of technical constraints, if there are too many, it makes the project complex. How closely are they related? And then the people working on those projects too. If they are not related, the quality of relationships on that project will be very poor. It won't be good, they won't have good relationships unless they are motivated to have good relationship. So this in turn influences the number of separate construction teams. So the design will also determine how many construction teams will be using on a project. So the more complex a project is, even if it's a small hospital, the more you need to get different technologies, the more you need to have different teams. And this increases the complexity and increases the need to manage the process. And it then determines the need to establish good relationships between those teams. So the level of complexity of the design is a major factor in determining inherent difficulty on the project. And so we say the design will determine the construction, number of construction teams involved, the quality of relationship, and the environment will determine if we'll have external interference on the project. So these two key characteristics, quality of relationships, the number of interacting teams, directly influence complexity of the construction project organization, which in turn contributes to a headache and difficulty in projects and construction management. Performance variability on its own is determined by the level and quality of workers we find and engage on a project. So the team performance may not be consistent within the project itself. So they are good, they will have good days, they'll have bad days. They'll have the days when they go on strike or the days when there's a dispute about something. So it's a measure and a range of performance achieved by the construction team on the project. And sometimes it varies widely. Can have 50% output today and then 100% tomorrow. And no one can plan on that type of variability. So it leads to more complexity and it needs to be understood. The quality of relationships between teams, number of interacting teams, and their past performance, variability, and external interference ultimately cause construction difficulty and influence construction efficiency. Efficient processes, it will influence the efficient processes. Therefore, construction management needs to devise strategies to mitigate that inherent difficulty so as to reduce their impact on efficiency. So our interest today is, do we have those formula for success? Can we have just a formula we can hand over to our contractors and say, run with it? It will remove your headache and you have simple projects to manage. So achieving the agreed project objectives. So ultimately, construction managers, due to their training, apply proactive strategies. So the word is not reactive, but proactive. Proactive strategies by selecting actions which mitigates the inherent difficulty, remove it, and then matching the actions of everyone involved to the resulting tasks, to the agreed objectives. My research has shown me over the years that the solution is strategic and project-based. So each project must be understood. The recipe for success is found in the project-focused construction management strategies. All projects are the same in terms of inherent difficulty, no matter how small the project is and depending on the design. But we need to know what's the level, calculate the level of that difficulty, and then apply these construction management strategies to it, to the approach used to deliver the project. So the main strategy that has been found is in the procurement systems. So there are 4 main construction management approaches used in practice and known as procurement systems. So the first one is the traditional construction, which is more reactive. It's a separation between design and construction. 2 points of responsibility. So you have the design team on one side and you have the production team on the other side. So 2 sides of responsibility. We have the design and build, or the turnkey method of procurement, where you have a single point of responsibility for the delivery of projects. Then we also have management approaches, especially on projects where you are not sure. There is a lot of unknowns. There are lots of risks and there are lots of external interference. It's going to need a lot of management inputs. So management approaches are used in designing and having management teams working under the general direction of the clients. And lastly, we have partnering. And partnering concentrates on establishing effective relationships. So you are partnering with another company or which you already have relationships with. So you could use that partnership. So it could be a design team and a contractor coming together. They've been working well together so they can partner on projects in order to ensure that the project achieves its aim of efficient, it achieves its agreed objectives. So it could be a strategic or ongoing relationship. So we have that a lot in construction. So the CM strategies can only be applied. So there's a caveat. It can only be applied if the project business has the experience to construct and deconstruct demand with the customer. So if the project business is so experienced and they know how to construct and deconstruct demand with the customer, rather than going through the traditional construction approach, which is reactive, and the design has already been submitted, and then a contractor is called and you propose a particular bid. So it's already too late by that time, except you have an experienced organization that is knowledgeable in deconstructing that bid and reconstructing it with the client. So proactive strategies by businesses seek to reconstruct and recreate the projects during the tender stage. So if you have a good business, they are experienced, because I worked for a construction company that is their goal. Bouygues is an international construction company. They have experience in deconstructing the proposals and reconstructing it with the help of the client, wherein they change the design and propose improvements in the project objectives, which the client would like in terms of lower costs, faster construction, and so on. So that construction management strategy would now ensure clients meet their agreed objectives. So that is the one solution, one formula for success is for a project organization, a project business that can reconstruct and recreate a project using another approach, even after it has gone out to tender. So we developed throughout my studies, we've come up with different construction management propositions that have developed over 2 decades of research that highlights the decisions made to guide project organizations in achieving success during the execution phase of a project. So these decisions aim to reduce the inherent difficulties of construction in a way which increases the chances of the agreed objectives being achieved. So we just look at some of those propositions that we have seen through research. So inherent difficulties on projects. Our research in this area has shown that construction projects experience uncertainties, which are usually not considered or factored into project plans. So when risks are planned for in advance, so you need experience to see those risks in advance, it is easier for the project to adapt and be resilient, meeting the objectives of cost and time. In terms of the reduced performance variability, our research in that area also has shown that performance is consistent when you engage skilled and certified workers. In terms of selecting teams competent in technologies required by the project, we found also that complexity and inherent difficulties will be reduced on projects when we have teams competent in those technologies required are selected. When we do not make use of incompetent teams, but make use of teams that are competent and who usually have been certified to do the work. Our research also in the area of minimizing the efforts needed to achieve accurate communication between teams found that having a well-defined organizational structure, which is part of planning, we know who is in charge, who has authority, who is responsible, and people who have authority have their responsibilities allocated to them also, and you know how the teams are related to each other, will lessen conflicts between the teams and improve communication and decision making. In terms of the quality of relationships, our research also found that the use of a CM strategy or procurement strategy approach like design and build or project partnering will help establish effective relationships on projects. Also, to minimize the resources team devotes to improving the terms of the transactions which brought them into the project organization, we found that there's a positive and significant direct relationship between the project's organization's resources and their performance. So an economic use of the resources will enhance performance. You don't want to use the resources in building relationships on projects. So you want those relationships to be established first. And so you minimize the resources they devote to improving their terms of the transactions which brought them into the project. And in terms of reducing external interference, we find that developing a plan that integrates the stakeholders' requirements into the project will reduce external interference on projects. So in South Africa, we have people called the business forums. And sometimes they invade projects, they stop the project process from going on. And this is because their requirements may not have been integrated into the project whilst it was being developed. So developing that plan, we find integrating their own requirements into the project will reduce external interference and project abandonment. I've heard of projects being abandoned because communities rejected the project and they didn't even let the project start. Improving the quality of design is also important. We found that having legible and coordinated designs, documentation will aid project performance. And the coordination of these designs is also important. The coordination between the architect's design, structural engineer, and the mechanical engineering designs on projects. So we also found out that transformational leadership, which is a type of leadership that causes changes in individuals and social systems, will help set the agenda and drive the team to achieve. So that was our finding. We found out that transformational leaders ensure that the teams accept their agreed objectives and are always motivated. So the leadership on projects must be transformational. So that's this talk for another day. So the question I asked was, is there a formula for construction project success so that the construction processes will achieve the agreed objectives? So my research over the past 25 years has shown that the solution is as strategic and project-based. This is because all construction projects are similar, but also different. They are similar because of the long-term nature of projects, activities, and because of the inherent difficulties and uncertainties on projects. So they have similarities, but they are also different because of the contextual factors. The client is different, the site is different, location is different, the materials used may be different, the materials specified will be different. The technologies, are we using conventional technologies? Are we using a local form of technology? Or is it even the technology not known within the country? Is it imported? Like the Cape Town Stadium, where some of the steel frames had to be imported. So are we using different technologies, or are we using the same technologies that we can find in that locality? So all those things cause those differences, and why projects have to be particular strategies aimed at the project needs to be developed. So each project has a unique DNA that must be studied and understood by the construction management professional in Nigeria or builders in order to develop those strategies and take decisions or actions that will remove the inherent difficulties and make the construction process resilient and straightforward so that it succeeds. As a construction manager, as I said before, we do not want to manage difficulties. So the first thing is to study the projects to find out the level of inherent difficulty on that project, and then to come up with those strategies. So if it's going to be a radical strategy, like deconstructing and reconstructing or co-creating with the clients, then that radical strategy has to be put in place. So if it's the one where we're going to make use of proposition, the propositions that have been found out, then we need to apply those propositions to the projects. So the recipe for success is found in the project-focused construction management strategies and propositions which make a difficult project simple to manage. So in conclusion, in answer to the question on availability of a formula for success to prevent project failure, we note that each construction project is unique because of contextual factors such as location, materials, and technologies that must be studied and understood by the construction management professional towards estimating the level of inherent difficulties on the projects and deciding on the best way to reduce them. So this will require that the range of actions and propositions highlighted in this presentation for building resilient systems that can withstand external interference and technical constraints should be adopted to develop straightforward, simple construction projects that enable construction to be undertaken efficiently, effectively, and productively. I want to acknowledge all those who have made it possible for me to get to this level where I am today. So I'll forever be grateful to Almighty God who has helped me on the journey to becoming a professor of construction management. It is the Lord's mercy that have not been consumed. Great is the Lord's faithfulness. I also want to thank my parents, Mr. Isaac Okulaja of blessed memory, and Mrs. Adebowale Okulaja, to the ones through whom my life came to be. My first teacher, my nurse and cook, whose prayers follow me everywhere I go, even to the foot of Table Mountain. My mother, Iyami, a feminist to the core, who taught me that what a man can do, a woman can do better. She who taught me the rudimentary principles of research, figuring out things, deducing, drawing inferences, and conclusions, infused through parables and incomplete sentences. She always said, and I agree, if I had the opportunity, I would have become more than a professor. Thank you so much for what you have done for me. My children in reverse mentorship. This is a picture taken 17 years ago. Bayonle, Kemi, and Bolaji, and this is their picture 2 years ago with Kemi's husband, Deolu Okeshola, for being a pillar of support and inspiring me to do more through the years. And I just want to mention that if you see nice drawings, all the nice drawings I have in my books, it's all been done by Bayonle, who has done all the nice drawings in my construction textbook and my building services textbook, and even in my fundamentals of construction management textbook. And also to Kemi, who helped me navigate what I call the PowerPoint presentation dilemma. In 2005, when I was to defend my PhD thesis, my oral defense, my HOD said I have to use a PowerPoint presentation. I had no clue what PowerPoint is. Don't be mistaken, I use computers. I know how to use Word, Excel, even AutoCAD, but I've never heard of PowerPoint. We usually use notes in lectures and we use it in presentation. But that day he said I should use PowerPoint. I got home so dejected, and she said, why, what happened? And I said, I have to use a PowerPoint tomorrow to present my PhD thesis to the external examiner, to the panel of examiners. 2 hours later, I had, do you want the words to fly in? And she was only 12 then, or do you want it to disappear? And the rest is history. So I said, thank you. And if you hear me sounding very intelligent, that is due to Bolaji, who would give me intelligent quips like, Africa will not develop without infrastructure. You are all simply awesome. Because of you, I'm here today. Thank you very much. I also want to acknowledge my family and my brothers, and who have all been with me throughout these years. It's a large family, a close-knit family. I have 3 brothers, all older than me. We are from a family of 4 children, and I'm the last one. So you must have known how spoiled I was. So they also looked after me. I say thank you so much for your guidance throughout the years, and all your love is appreciated. Thank you so much to my family and to my mentors, my supervisors, Professor Yagba, Professor Wahab, Professor Ogunsomi, also of blessed memory. I say thank you very much. Professor Omiri, and Professor Ufori, Professor Akitoye, and Professor Golding, Professor Gulano, and Professor Welamila. And I'll add to that list Professor John Ebo. I say thank you very much for your support for me over the years. And to my students, loyal, committed, and knowledgeable students and mentees, Dr. Lukman Oyewobi, Dr. Sunday Odediran, Dr. Abdul Adediran, Dr. Alireza Mugaedi, Dr. Sheye Olugboyega, Dr. Emmanuel Omopariola, and Dr. Kenny Alade, Emmanuel Akampurira, Mrs. Amanda Mutia, Mochelo Lefoka, Dr. Ned Umeokafo, and Dr. Lindelani Machitse. I appreciate your contribution to my work. Without you, this would not have been possible. I wouldn't have been able to get to this position. Thank you so much. And you'll have seen through all the references that I made. That was research that I had done with students' inputs. Thank you so much for your contribution to my work. I also want to thank my project collaborators and colleagues in the built environment, the Arua project, Professor Nubi, Professor Adebisi, Professor Pomponi, Professor Olatunji, Professor Rotimi, and Professor Kesh Govinda, Dr. Njeri Towi, and Professor Ayeton, Professor Emuze. Thank you so much. And all to my colleagues in academia at the University of Lagos, I say thank you too, and also at the University of Cape Town. I say thank you so much for your help and for your contributions, and seeing me through all the difficult parts in my research. I want to recognize Mrs. Vanessa Dairies and Ms. Jenny Breda at the reception, who pray sunshine into my dark days always, and also to Mareldia Fagodin and Wada Samai. Thank you all so much for your support to me in the department. I also want to acknowledge the role played by Professor Keith Kettel in bringing me to UCT and also contributing to my research in various ways. My thanks will not be made complete if I do not recognize the help also provided by Gil Ramon and Dr. Charles Masango for their help, of the research office, for their help with honing my research skills. I also recognize my colleagues, all my colleagues in practice, starting from Bilda Wobodu and Bilda Umeife, even Graham Teed of the Australian Institute of Building. I say thank you so much. And also acknowledge the institutes and professional associations to which I belong, APWBN, NIOB, and Cobon, and my universities, starting from the Great University of Ife to the University of Lagos, and now University of Cape Town, the platform on which I stand. I will say is the first in Africa for providing the facilities and funding that support high quality teaching and research. I say thank you, and my funders, which Kenny is also going to acknowledge for us, RANG, NRF, and CIDB. I also like to thank the organizers of the NSTF South 32 Awards for finding me worthy to be recognized on their platform, BIM Africa and APWBN. I would have wished to mention all names, but time will not just permit. I wish to thank everyone who has, in one way or the other, contributed to my research. Thank you so much everybody. Thank you for listening to my inaugural lecture. God bless all of you. God bless South Africa. God bless Nigeria. And God bless Africa. I thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Abimbola. Dr. Kenny Alade is going to be the respondent. Kenny, over to you.
Okay, thanks. So the host, Vice-Chancellor, University of Cape Town, Professor Mamukete Pateng, all other respected protocols, most valued invited guests, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It was an English mathematician and philosopher by name Alfred North Whitefield who said, and I quote, "No one achieves success without the help of others. I am therefore privileged, delighted, and greatly honored to propose this vote of thanks today on behalf of our esteemed lecturer, being the newest of our doctoral products in this prestigious university, the University of Cape Town." Now, before I proceed with the vote of thanks, the lecture today on building resilient foundations to prevent project failure, is there a formula for success? As I highlighted the complexity of construction projects and the inherent difficulties associated with them, which stems from managing various stakeholders with different interests, often conflicting, as well as project uniqueness and even contextual factors that all leads to complexity and hinders project performance, which can be measured in terms of timeliness, in terms of cost effectiveness, in terms of quality, and in terms of scope, which is with regards to meeting the agreed project objectives. Accordingly, we have been inspired through the research of Professor Abimbola Windapo of over 2 decades to avoid project failure and achieve project success by using her cookbook recipe, which is having some proactive construction management strategies that she has proposed over time and through the years to mitigate the difficulties with projects and their complexity. So we have seen today 2 key components of these proactive construction management strategies. The first component, which are to reduce the inherent difficulties and complexities, and the second component, which comprises of the helpful factors, which must be increased. So we are to reduce risks associated with project uncertainties, which are often not factored into project plans. And we are also to reduce performance variabilities by engaging competent and skilled workforce. We are to reduce the number of interactive teams on construction projects and minimize conflicts with well-defined organizational structures. We are to minimize resources to minimize the resources that teams have that also leads to complexity. And we are also to minimize the efforts to achieve effective communication between teams and reduce external interference. In terms of improving the helpful factors, we are to ensure quality of design and quality of relationships on projects, as well as ensure that teams have transformational leaders who will set the agenda and also drive the agenda for project success. Therefore, let me begin by thanking the Almighty God for making today a reality, and thank our lecturer of today for inspiration, mentoring over the years, and hard work in teaching, research, and divulging knowledge through different publications. Now, it is often said that nothing can be done without money. So I will begin this vote of thanks by expressing a deep sense of appreciation to all our funders. I will start with the National Research Foundation, NRF, the Construction Industry Development Board, CIDB, the Royal Academy of Engineering, REng, and IAPP project, and the following people on the project: Professor Francesco Pomponi, Professor Fidelis Emuse, Dr. Cecil Madel, Mr. Gama Sebande, and Ms. Susnedo. We are also grateful to our collaborators for their partnership and support, notably the Arua Center for Urbanization and Habitable Cities, University of Lagos, and the director earlier acknowledged, Professor Timothy Benganobi, the Arua Center for Unemployment, Skills and Development, University of Lagos, and the director, Professor Sunday Adebisi, the National Home Builders Registration Council, NHBRC, Miller SA, the Ubukle Baka Ubukle, and director, Mr. Barry Leons and his team. We also acknowledge and thank other collaborators, Professor Rotimi Olatuji, Dr. Isabella Njeri Wachitora Tui, Professor John Obas Ebohon. We appreciate the support of the members of the Construction Business and Management Group, Management Research Group, and the IDMAT project. IDMAT stands for Innovative Building Materials and Technologies, and all the contributions made by the editorial team, reviewers, and authors of the Journal of Construction Business and Management. Time will fail me to list you all, but we thank all of you. We thank the members of the organizing committee for the Construction Business and Project Management Conference, both for year 2021 and the upcoming one in 2022, hosted by the Construction Business and Management Research Group, including Professor Besikipo Tuala, Associate Professor Ayodeji Ayeton, Dr. Lindelani Matshide, Dr. Mudupe Mewomo, Dr. Nedima Umeokafo, Dr. Chioma Okoro, Dr. Abdul Adediran, and Ms. Amanda Mitia. We would like to extend appreciation to contemporaries, some of them here with me, for their moral support, their technical support, notably Mr. Johnson Adetoto, Mr. Muchelo Lefoka, Mr. Fabio Company, Ms. Christy Ipo, Mr. Emmanuel Akampurira, Ms. Mesindisi Yende. Finally, I must place on record our hearty thanks to the host of today's event, the amiable Vice-Chancellor of the best university in Africa, Professor Mamoketi Fateng, for this platform. And once again, to all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, who have joined from far and wide, we thank you all for being with us this evening. It's been a great, great privilege. And thank you, everyone. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Alande. And congratulations once again, Professor Abimbola. You know, often we talk about creating possibilities for women to come into academia, but also to come into STEM disciplines. And here you are, you made it. When I talk to young women, encouraging them to get into academia, I say to them, it is not glamorous, it is hard work. And then I encourage them to stay the course. You, Professor Abimbola Windapo, have stayed the course. And for that, we want to thank you. We want to thank you also for choosing us as UCT to be your academic home. You could have chosen to be elsewhere. You've chosen to be with us. And we want to thank you for that, because it is here where your scholarship has grown, and it is here where you will join hands with us to educate and train other young academics who can be as exceptional as you are. So thank you very much for choosing UCT. On behalf of Senate, Council, and the entire university community, we want to congratulate you and welcome to the professorate. Congratulations, Professor Abimbola Windapo. Thank you to everyone who joined us for this evening's lecture. I hope you were inspired. I hope you were encouraged. I hope you found it as instructive as I did. Thank you very much for joining us. And thank you to everyone who supported Professor Abimbola Windapo to get here. Have a good evening.